Alright, here we are. We're going to be replacing the transmission on this 2001 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. It's also getting a new rear end entirely, so it's getting about pretty much everything all did up to it.
We're going elbow deep.
We're going elbow deep in this thing. So, yep, we're going to show you pretty much all the steps, the general steps. We're not going to show you all the work because we're interested in getting it done fast.
But have it done and wait about 2 weeks to show you guys everything.
Yeah, so we're gonna show you pretty much step by step the main things you need to do. We're just gonna gloss over the work side of it, but we'll show you how to do it. All right, so for the first step of doing this whole transmission swap is taking out the drive shaft. So the transmission connects, the drive shaft connects right up there. There's no bolts, it just pushes in. Back side here, there are bolts that we need to remove. So what we're doing is unscrewing them and then taking the e-brake off, rotating the wheels so the drive shaft spins, turning it back on and taking them out. So that's what we're at right now. So we got the drive shaft all unbolted. Now we're just gonna take off this torque arm. There's two big bolts right there. We do that just to get some more room out of here to remove the drive shaft.
Without having to touch the exhaust.
Yeah, without having to touch the exhaust because it is pretty restrictive under here. Just as a quick update for these bolts on the torque arm or torque bar, there are studs or they go all the way through, so you gotta have something up there to hold them or they'll just spin.
Tristan probably wants these.
Yeah, Tristan probably does want this for his Camaro, but we got the arm off. The bolts go all the way through to the top, and they do thread at the top too. So even if you unscrew the nuts down there, you'll get them all the way to the top. You have to unscrew them by hand, or if you can get a tiny wrench up there, you can do that too. So now we're just going to pull out the drive shaft and proceed with all this. Alright, so we just got the drive shaft out, nothing holds it in there, it's just a couple splines. So basically from this side, you just push towards the front and that'll disconnect it at that side, and then you can drop it down and then pull it out the back. And you can see this car definitely needed it. Needed some help.
Fuck you, man.
It's a
fuck you.
POS.
What? Okay.
So at this point, we're going to be removing the O2 sensors and the shifter linkage. So we're just getting everything set up here. You can see how oily it is.
Shut the fuck up.
So we got the shifter linkage off, just popped off, and then got it out of the way. There's two parts that hold up or connect it right there. And now we are going to disconnect the electronics, the O2 sensors, and anything else that might be in the way. And after that, I think we should be able to start on the bolts on the transmission itself. So we're just trying to get everything out from under here as we can. Just give as much clearance to make sure it doesn't snag on anything.
That one's like fucking this wide.
So we got all the electronics out of the way. Next step is to take out this Crossmember. We got the training jack just to support it. And once we have this out of the way, we can get at the top bolts. Just a little bunch of extensions. So. Okay, so we disconnected the transmission cross member, so now the next instructions are to lower the transmission an inch or two, so that'll give us clearance to the bolts on top of the transmission. Once we get those off,
Alright, remove
get to other stuff.
hard lines, hoses, and everything else.
Oh yeah, we have
Hard
to take
lines
the
are on this
transmission lines. To get some extra clearance to these transmission lines, we're going to be removing the seat shielding with a couple of 7mm bolts. We need to get to. This will just give us a lot more room and be a bit safer than scraping up our arms trying to get to them. So right now we are trying to get the transmission lines out. I'll zoom in on where it is. So see that right there in the center? That is the transmission line. There's one just right below it. Can't really get my phone up there to see it, maybe. Yeah, there's the two. So there are clips in there that just need to be taken out, and supposedly they're supposed to just pull out. That's what we're working on right now. So just get those two transmission lines out. Alright, so we are taking out the transmission bolts. As you can see, there's one right there. They go up kind of towards the top, and there's going to be like 2 or 3 at the top. We're working on our 6th one, and we kind of gave up on the transmission line and getting the dipstick out. Just for whatever reason, this car does not want to get let go. So we're going to try taking the bolts out and try lowering it, and then taking them out. And if we're going to have to make custom lines for the trans cooler, then we will do that. But that is where we are at now. We have 5 of the bolts out, working on the 6th one, and then we're going to take about 4 feet of extensions, come back here to the back of the transmission, and then go at the top to those last couple bolts. And as far as we know, that's the easiest way to do it, so that's what we're gonna do. So I ended up taking off the crossmember just to get some extra clearance for some things. Right now what we're going to be working on is the flywheel bolts. It's bolted to the torque converter. We had to remove the starter here, just get some clearance. I'll come around just to show you the access side. So we're coming in right up there, you can see the flywheel there. So we're just going to rotate it and take off the bolts, and once that's unbolted, we should be able to get at the top bolts and then remove the transmission.
Normally in that spot you will find your starter and the plastic inspection cover that has to come off.
Yep, so you just have to remove those bits. So as Vince takes out the torque converter bolts, or the flywheel ones, I'm going to be rotating the flywheel from right here. There's just an inspection cover that you just have to pop off, and it allows us to rotate it to neutral so we can just move it one tooth at a time. So we just got the last bolt out of the transmission. We're getting the inspection cover back on, and now what we're going to do is going to lift up the transmission and back it outwards, because there shouldn't be anything else holding it on.
Except for maybe the dipstick.
Maybe the dipstick. Well, yeah, the dipstick definitely, but we're gonna figure that out. It's just being a bitch. So we're gonna try pulling it out and see about the dipstick, and the transmission should come off of the engine. So we're bringing down the transmission. We just had to level it out and get a pry tool in there just to pry it out. Doesn't have to travel very far to get it popped off. So we're still lowering it down. Just some electrical connections that were just a little bit stuck up there. I'm dealing with a little bit of leak. That's just from the dipstick hole. It'll stop eventually. And once we get it down, I'm thinking we might need to lift the car up a bit higher, because even the exhaust is a bit low, so we might just need to lift up the car a bit to get that clearance. But looks like this is stopped leaking, and we'll show you once this is down and out. Yep, so we got it down. We had to ditch the jack because there's just not enough clearance to get it out, so we slowly, carefully got it on the ground. We dropped some training fluid, but just have to clean that up. Now that it's on the ground, we're going to snake it out from under there. So here's a view of the flywheel. Good preventative maintenance is to take it off and replace the rear main seal if it's a high mileage. If it's not leaking visibly, not really a bother. It looks like it might be leaking from right there. Yeah, we might do it. But yeah, that's where you get to. You just remove those bolts, and from there you should be able to reach it and pull it out and replace it. It's like a $5-10 piece, so the seal isn't that expensive, and it's good preventative maintenance, so it doesn't leak. All right, more or less that's how you remove the transmission out of a F-body. Any 90
taller jacks, use those so you don't have to make a big mess.
Yeah, use as tall jacks as you can, or lift if possible. But this is how you do any 9802 Camaro or Firebird with the 4L60E. Fairly straightforward, didn't take that many hours to do. Now we have the new remanufactured one to go in there. So you just got to be careful with the bell housing if you go this route. Most of the time you just have to reuse it. And I think that is about it for this swap. Everything else is just in reverse. Lift the new transmission back up in there. Get in the torque converter bolts bolted up to the flywheel. Bolt up the transmission. Get the starter back in. All the miscellaneous lines. We did have to cut these transmission lines, but they're not very high pressure, so we're just going to be fitting them with some soft lines. And getting those wired back up, getting the shift linkage back on, and then drive shaft on, torque arm on, and you should be complete with that. So thanks for watching.